To me, when I'm choosing where I'm gonna go and who's gonna be injecting me and touching my face, I mean, it's your face.
It was hard. It was a hard decision because to invite somebody else into our baby.
Hey there, and welcome to Beauty and the Brain, the podcast on all things medical aesthetics. We're here today to spill the tea on some things that I know you guys are interested in. That is, how do you choose your aesthetic injector? So I'm joined by co-host and my husband, Jerry, a family nurse practitioner, and our nurse practitioner in the office, Allie Ballew. So we've kind of went the realm of things. We took classes and started our injector practice about 15 years ago, and then Allie's joined us, and she's been with us a little over a year now. And so we're going to go over today how do we choose a medical injector? How do we choose someone that we're going to hire? And from Allie's perspective, what is the training that she's received, and how do you choose an aesthetic injector when you're out there evaluating all the choices on the market?
I think that's becoming harder and harder because I think there are more people that are offering these services. There's nurse practitioners all over that some states now have independent practice, or family nurse practitioners even have the potential for independent practice in the state of Florida. And so we have a lot just in our area. Fortunately, Pensacola is blessed with some really good injectors, but then also outside of that, you also have people that are injecting now that are dentists, and we teach and train in other states. Some states estheticians can do injectables. So, I don't think that a person's profession necessarily makes them good or bad. I think some of the estheticians are phenomenal injectors. Certainly dentists are phenomenal injectors, and nurse practitioners can be, but it all goes back to me is like, what qualifies you to do injectables or laser treatments or whatever aesthetics we're talking about. So I think it's hard. I think it's getting more difficult, and I think it'll continue to get more difficult. So how did you choose? First time you got Botox, how did you decide who you were coming to?
Well, I personally knew Dr. Croley from working with him in the ICU, and so I came to see you. And you're the only person who's ever injected me. So I had it pretty easy. No, but I think, like you said, obviously you want somebody that's qualified, who has had good training, and who also, I think, does this for a living. In my opinion, like, I want to go to somebody who does this all day, every day, is seeing maximum amounts of patients and knows the maximum amount of what can happen, complications, safety procedures, all of those things. I think somebody that does it for their full-time job more times than not is just going to have more experience and is going to, know more about the procedures.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, we've talked about this on probably almost every previous episode about the influence of social media. And so that's how a lot of people are deciding. And so, there's social media out there, but there's also reviews. I think, to me personally, word of mouth is so important. And I think that's how Chris and I really built Skin Tonic, or JDCC originally, how we built our practice to what we are today. And we have patients that have now been with us for years. And I think that's probably the way that our business grew the most, was simply from word of mouth. But how, when you go somewhere, if you don't know someone personally, how do you vet the person that's doing your injectable?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good for us, though, to even talk about how we got started, right? And so, we could give you a recipe on how you could choose somebody, but not everyone follows that exact path. So I think if you look at my training, I'm board certified in anesthesia and critical care medicine. I trained at two well-known institutions, at Rush University and Northwestern in Chicago. And so when people say, how did you venture into the aesthetics industry? How did you ever start injecting, the Botox or fillers? I think that's a great question, and it's not something you would typically think of. But what we see is that this field is something that opens itself up to a variety of medical professionals to enter into it and really kind of learn that craft and learn that technique. As we talked about in our first episode, actually, was that you were first interested in pursuing a career in aesthetics as a registered nurse at the time. And I just kind of, was tagging along with you to take the class. And then it's something that I really had a passion for and I loved. And so we took more classes. But at that time, and we weren't doing this full time. So I do think that a full-time position certainly gives you your experience in a shorter time frame. So we could have compressed that to a much shorter period of time. But you were doing this in Chicago. We were doing some Botox parties on the side. But it took us quite a while. We grew our business a lot slower than some of the startups that we see now. And I think that's because we weren't doing this all the time. We were seeing kind of groups of patients, but we were only seeing them kind of in a condensed time frame. And then we had other jobs that we were having to do to kind of pay the bills while we were building the practice.
I mean, it's a pricey industry to get in to start, and so unfortunately, some people aren't able to do it full time, and that kind of leads into we get this in every class about Botox parties. And that's the way a lot of people start. And so I don't think that it necessarily discredits anyone. You'll hear this is probably a really controversial subject actually between injectors, because I don't think the Botox parties are necessarily controversial. I think that you can inject people in a lot of different situations as long as you use like an aseptic or sterile technique, depending on what you're doing. And so I think as long as it goes back to vetting your provider. Is it someone that's been properly trained, someone that has the safety mechanisms in place if something does go wrong, because it can, especially with some of these dermal fillers. And so, I think those are questions that are fair for people to ask their provider.
And are they using FDA approved products?
Yeah, like are your products from the states? Are they FDA approved? And why are you able to offer such reduced prices? Usually if there's a red flag, then I personally wouldn't go there.
So many of you guys know I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Empire Medical Training, which is a large aesthetic training company. And Jerry and Allie both are instructors as well. I'm also a gain trainer for Galderma. Jerry's done training for MERS before. So we've kind of seen this from the beginning when we were just learning how to inject and doing things like Botox parties and, growing into a large practice now with multiple providers, multiple injectors. And it's definitely harder in the beginning. So when you're first starting out and just doing a low volume or a low number of providers, the products cost a lot of money. And so they're expensive for us to get from the manufacturer. So some of these newer practices that are open up, when I see prices that are advertised that are lower than the actual price that we can actually buy the medication, that's a red flag to us. But we know that from kind of being on the inside. I think that's hard as a consumer because you're looking at that and you're saying, hey, that's a great price and let me go and get this, product. So Allie, you kind of talked a little bit about getting your products from, an FDA approved source. How would a consumer know that?
That's kind of hard. I guess, just asking the provider, what products are you using, doing your research on those products, knowing, what's okay, to put in a face and what's not okay to put in a face. And it is hard for the consumer, I think, but anybody can do, a quick Google search on like a brand of a product, I think, and, go through and see, is this FDA approved? Is this something? Talk to your friends and family too that have gotten aesthetic procedures. Is this normal? What do you pay for this? And if it's a super, super, super low price, that's when you need to start asking questions.
Another thing to consider is almost every company now offers some type of reward system for their patients. So, we have Aspire and Allie and Prolinium has one and MERS now has one. And so I think that if they're able to offer you the points or the perks of that, then very likely it is an approved product. And so I think that's a fair question to ask. As Allie said, I think a Google search for a medical license is really easy to do, or a nursing license. But I also think it's fair to ask your provider direct questions. I'm never offended if somebody asks me where I was trained or how long have you been doing this, or, and kind of I guess picking on dentists a little bit, I have people say, can you believe that my dentist is even offering, neuromodulators now? And I would 1,000% trust. I mean, they know the facial anatomy as well as, or better than, anyone. So I think as long as there's proper training, safety measures in place, and the appropriate products, then, that's how I would choose my provider.
Yeah, so I think obviously when we entrust ourselves to medical care from anyone, you're having to trust that there's some degree of transparency and honesty. So I think simply asking the provider, where do they get their products? Are they approved for distribution in the U.S.? Because if they Google some of this, what you'll find is that many of these things are labeled the same. And so they may have the same name, may be labeled the same, but they're not actually approved for distribution in the U.S. And even some of the providers that may be listening to this podcast, it's easy for you to get confused as to what you're being offered. So I know that every week we get offers and advertisements from different sorts of companies that say, hey, you can get your product, and Restylane, Juvederm, all the major brands, right? They'll say it's the same thing and it has the same name, and you can get it from us, and it'll be like a half or maybe even a third of the price that we get it through our approved distribution channels. And so, that should throw up a red flag. Like, how is this product entering the U.S.? Are you an approved distribution source of that product? For the product is an important way to make sure that you are getting what is approved for distribution in the U.S.
The other thing to be concerned with is we all have to start somewhere. And so, longevity in the industry is not necessarily what makes someone really good, nor makes someone really bad. And so I think, again, proper training, appropriate product use, knowing how to handle complications as they come up, are fair questions to ask. And so I've been asked several times, like, you look so young, how can you do this? So, not really, but right. But it says the baby in the room. But we've been doing this for 15 years now, and I cannot tell you the amount of money that we spend on training, and we continue to do that. And every time I go to a training, I learn something. I think I did 2 last month, and then we also continue to teach. And I think that's one of the things that that really validates what your injector's doing. I'm not saying that you have to be an instructor with a major company, but when you are instructing and teaching and training on the new trends, it makes you stay on your toes. It keeps you up on your game, and it keeps you up on what's current, what's safe, what's going to cause us problems down the road.
So, Allie, what have you found the most exciting? I mean, you've entered this now. It's kind of, we can remember those things, but it's been a while since we started. So for you, what's been the most challenging, the most exciting things that you've kind of experienced over the last year that you've been working full-time in our clinic?
Most exciting is, I think the thing I feel best about is the training that I've had. Maybe that's not excitement, but the thing I feel good about is knowing that I have either you or Jerry in the clinic with me most days. Not as many now that I'm well trained, but at the beginning, and it was just like starting slow, I think for me was so important. It wasn't like I felt like I got everything thrown on me at once. You can go to these like big conferences and instructions, and you'll see, you may take multiple classes, but I love taking it kind of one thing at a time and fully learning something before moving on to the next thing, practicing that thing while I'm moving on to learning the next. And so that's made me feel super secure in my injections and super safe. The most exciting thing I think was lip filler. That's a boring answer, but
it's not boring, right? Everybody loves lip filler, right? So it's one of our most commonly requested procedures.
Maybe it's only more boring for us because we know how much we do it in the office. So it seems like a boring answer, but it's never boring to me. I love doing it every time. So that's been the most exciting thing. And I think also being an outsider to the aesthetics world originally, I think I didn't think about all the collagen stimulating procedures, and I do a lot of our energy-based devices at the clinic. And I think that's not something that I ever thought of, especially as a younger person, because you hear about Botox, you hear about fillers, you hear about all of these things, and it's not always as advertised or pushed on the younger crowd. I feel like the energy-based devices and collagen stimulating things that we can do.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen us in the practice or are new to listening to the podcast, just a little background on Allie. I'm going to brag on her for a minute because I've worked with her for many years. So just out of, when she got her first job in the ICU. And over that time, Jerry and I have had lots of people who have applied for positions in the office and lots of people that we could have chosen to work with and train. And we really opted not to do that for a while. We kind of we did have other people that helped us, but they were nurses or estheticians, and we kept all the injectables to ourselves. And so we really waited until we felt that we had someone kind of perfect. And I don't even think you were thinking about going into aesthetics. You were thinking of going into the ICU at the time.
Yeah.
So, I was Allie's preceptor throughout her nurse practitioner training in the hospital setting, and really kind of appreciated your attention to detail, the rapport that she would have with the patient. She really was thorough with her examination. She was great with handling, difficult families. And so, although she didn't have experience in the aesthetic field, I talked to Jerry about it. We had a conversation, and it was something, that we saw as a valuable addition to our team at Skin Tonic, and we were fortunate that she chose to join us. And I think we've never looked back on that decision.
It was hard. It was a hard decision because for years it was one of the two of us that was injecting, and so we trained together. I don't know if we ever at that point had done a class apart. I mean, clearly we had different practice techniques, but we both were trained the same. We both knew how to handle complications. We both treat pretty conservatively, and it's really hard to invite somebody else into our baby because that's what it's been. And it's it's one of those things that once we got Allie in, and she's just been a perfect fit for us. And the rapport with patients, I think, is one of the things that we've all seen a provider of some sort, whether a primary care doctor or a pharmacist even, or we've all had some person that we weren't comfortable with. But when someone's putting needles in your face or giving you a plan, like, we didn't ever plan to see a patient once for Botox or once for filler. Like, my plan is when somebody walks through the front door at Skin Tonic, they're ours for years. And so that's what we want and that's what I think all providers should think about. And I think all patients should think about also is this is a relationship. It's not a Botox treatment or a filler treatment. And so I think if you take and you put it in that perspective, you start building trust. And that, to me, is the way that you choose your provider. Whether it's somebody that's looking for a first-time treatment or somebody looking to hire a new person to help them in their clinic, I think it's all built on trust. And that sounds cliche and sounds easy, but it's really hard. Like, we're fortunate that Chris had the inside, knowledge on Allie, and he knew all of her strengths and knew her weaknesses. And so,
What weaknesses? I'm just kidding.
Like, no, none.
No weaknesses.
I feel so blessed. I mean, every day, when I go to work, being excited to go to work is such a blessing to me. And I still feel so incredibly lucky that y'all trusted me. Cause like you said, I mean, it's your baby, and I could have came in and been crazy and reckless, and you never know. But I think it's great that we did have a relationship before I started working with you guys, and for Jerry being willing to train me literally every second of every day. We spend, I know, more time sometimes than you two spend together. So we spend a lot of time together. And so it's just been great. I mean, if I had $1 for every time somebody that I graduated with asked me how I got into aesthetics, I wouldn't have to work. So I know it's a very desirable position, and, something that everybody's super interested in. And, unfortunately, sometimes the medical side of things can get into a toxic environment, and I'm just super blessed that I was able to get out of that and into the world of aesthetics.
Yeah, it's a fun field.
It's so fun.
I mean, it really is. It's fun, and no, there's never a day that's the same. My day can be filled. I can have 14 Botox patients or Dysport patients on my schedule, and they never are just that simple.
And we actually really do, like, it's not like going to work for us, right? We love our patients. Like, we have such fun people in our practice. And I think you build a practice, and depending if you build that trust with the patients and they share their lives with you, they really let us into their lives. And, we laugh about it sometimes, and they even tell us, they're like, that's probably more than you wanted to hear about us. But, it really is fun that they get to share that with us, and we build that relationship, and that helps us come up with these long-term treatment plans. So we're not just filling a wrinkle or pumping a cheek. We're really saying, what are your overall aesthetic goals, and how can we help you accomplish that and maintain it over a long period of time? So let's jump a little bit into training. So there's a lot of different ways that people can receive training if they're interested in going to aesthetics. And I think we see in a lot of areas, and I'll use our particular area, as an example. Some months we have 8 to 10 new injectors entering this space. And they're a lot of people view them as our competitors, and I get asked often, like, "Oh, did you hear so and so is doing this? Aren't you worried about, they're right down the street from you?" So Jerry, what's your take when people ask you about all the new people entering the industry?
I always tell Chris, I was like, it's the community. It's not a competition. This is not a competition. It's about the community. And then we were at AmSpa and someone talked to it, and I was like, dang, I missed it. I should have done this. But I truly feel like that. I can't tell you, probably not a day goes by that, certainly not a week goes by that I don't hear from at least one injector in town that either has a question or I ask a question. And I feel certain also, we have, we've had a couple of work dinners, if you want to call it that, recently by some of the different products the reps have done in our area. And it's really good because several of us know each other from social media. We know each other because we all share patients. Any way you look at it, I'm going to have somebody that's not a perfect fit for Allie. Allie's going to have someone that's not a perfect fit for me. Chris is, some of the other ladies in town or injectors in town. And so, we have to be able to work with all of these different patient personalities, but we also need that community for when there is a complication or I just had a patient recently, and I've reached out to everyone. Any of you on my social media have seen this particular patient that, just looking for help with dissolving some filler that's not so dissolvable. And so I think it's really nice to be able to have those new people joining, because sometimes new people bring new knowledge. And so that's kind of my thought on it, is they're not my competition. We have some they're like right there with us, but as far as like any type of bitterness or anything, like.
No, I think it's great. I think it's something we can learn from each other. We can support each other, and we can all grow and succeed. And it's all really about, we want a successful business in the long run, but it's also about taking care of patients, right? And this is one of the few fields where you can venture into that competition. I mean, don't think necessarily about the cardiologists competing with each other, right? I mean, there's a bunch of them in town, and they all take care of their own individual patients, and we're kind of the same way. So I hope that the patients that are coming into our practice, they and many of them do continue to see us, because not only do they know they're in skilled hands and that we've had adequate training, but we're taking that approach where we're building that rapport with them over time. So, Allie, how do you deal with patients when they call and really their main focus is price, and they want to talk about, well, I called down the street a block or two, and this procedure is going to be $50 less there. Why should I come to you?
I think definitely credentialing yourself first and foremost, and then reiterating also to the client, their potential client, that safety is the forefront of our practice, as well as results. And so to me, when I'm choosing where I'm going to go and who's going to be injecting me and touching my face, I mean, it's your face, right? I mean, it's very important. It's going to be safety number one, results number two, and price is the third, the last thing on my list of concerns, because, I mean, it's your face. That's what people see you as. And it's, it's not something to take lightly.
Do you ever, take offense, or do you feel, guarded or defensive if a patient asks you about our emergency protocols or what supplies do we have on hand if something goes wrong?
No, I like to be, very upfront with my patients and telling them the risks. Like that's the first thing I want to go over with any procedure that we're doing. And then B is going to be, what we can do if something goes wrong. And I think that, and when you said take offense, I thought you were going to go to something else. So just to touch on that, I thought you were going to say take offense to like people who offer what we offer, but cheaper, or because I recently had that happen to me. They're like, oh, there's this great deal, down the road. And I said, I won't be offended, because she almost came to me asking for almost permission, it seems like, because she had seen me before for laser hair removal. And I told her, I said, honestly, like it's a great deal. I would make sure that it's safe, that the device is safe, that they know what they're doing, and I told her some questions that she can ask to be able to compare their device to ours, their provider to me. And I told her, I said, if that's what you want to do, like go do it. And then if it doesn't work out, come back and see me. Like, I'm not going to blame you at all. It's a great deal. And so I think that, sometimes that's just part of it. Sometimes people
I mean, I
can
love
offer
that.
cheaper price.
And, I think that we've kind of shared that with you from the beginning. Like we have patients and sometimes they tell us and I'm like, hey, it's a great deal.
Yeah.
And again, ask the things, is it appropriate for your skin type? Is it, the appropriate device? Are you going to have the same results? And if they want to go and do that, then by all means, we all love a good deal when we can find it. Kind of at our practice, we do, pride ourselves on using the top quality products that we can buy on the market, and that we have safety protocols in place for every single thing that we do there, and we're all involved. So as the medical director, I'm not removed or, out of touch. Clearly, Jerry's my husband. And so we talk about a lot of cases at night or any challenges and touch base with you on a very regular basis. And, we're all skilled and able to handle those complications at our practice. Anything that you guys want to say, kind of final words on choosing your injector?
Yeah, anyone on social media probably has seen this. And it's a Groupon is where she found it. Not saying that there's anything wrong with Groupon, but she's a Fitzpatrick 5. Have you seen this? The Fitzpatrick 5 had a BBL laser done by a provider that wasn't familiar with the machine, and she has got some permanent scarring to deal with. And so I watched like a little short interview with her, and it was never discussed with her about the risk for her skin type. And so, it is your provider's responsibility to know how to work these machines or inject these products. But also I think we have, as patients, because all of us sitting here are patients, and I think it's our responsibility also to have some knowledge going into it about what questions to ask. And so, just do your homework. You wouldn't go and have a boob job without doing a little homework on that. And the same thing with some of these injectables.
Again, ask questions. Your injector should not in any way be defensive about their credentials or how they've learned to do these things. We also, offer a lot of new technology. We're continually evaluating new injectables, new devices. And as we're doing this, like, we're very transparent with the patient. We tell them, this is our first time doing this type of procedure, whatever it may be, when we're evaluating it. So they know they're not coming in and expecting somebody that's done hundreds of those procedures. We're transparent, and then we tell them all the risk. And sometimes they say, no, thank you, I don't want to do that. And that's fine. That's their right. So as long as they are fully informed of the risk and your credentials, you enter into that agreement to treat them together. Thanks again for tuning in this week to another episode of Beauty in the Brain. We were so fortunate to have Allie with us today. You guys will be seeing her frequently on our podcast, so we really love having her around and hope you learn as much from her as we do. Tune in next week for more hot topics. We'll see you soon.